These were the events surrounding Ted Bundy, one of America's most infamous serial killers, on his last day on Earth. In the early morning hours of January 24, 1989, the Florida State Prison prepared for a moment that had been years in the making. Ted Bundy was about to face execution after spending over a decade on death row. Convicted for the brutal murders of Kimberly Leach, Margaret Bowman, and Lisa Levy, Bundy had admitted to killing 30 women and was suspected of murdering many more. The night before his execution, he remained in his cell and was alone with his thoughts. He made two touching phone calls to his mother, Louise Bundy, who was in Tacoma, Washington. Louise had defended her son's innocence over the years, but as the execution approached, she just knew nothing could be done. She told him, "You'll always be my precious son." Louise chose not to attend the execution, saying it would be too painful to witness. Bundy also spent part of the night speaking with Dr. James Dobson, a Christian psychologist and broadcaster. In their conversation, he blamed his violent behavior on a deep addiction to pornography, which he claimed had warped his mind. While he expressed remorse for his crimes, many believed his words were insincere and calculated to shift blame. Later, he prayed with Fred Lawrence, a Methodist minister who had offered him spiritual guidance in his final years. Outside the prison, hundreds of people had gathered, some to protest the execution, but most to celebrate what they saw as long overdue justice. The crowd was filled with many holding signs and chanting slogans like "Burn Bundy Burn," which turned the occasion grim. Vendors sold t-shirts with slogans such as "Toast Ted" and "Thank God It's Friday." Around 4:50 a.m., Bundy was offered his last meal. Unlike other inmates who often requested elaborate meals, Bundy declined to make a special request. Instead, he was served the standard prison meal of steak, eggs, toast, and hash browns. The plate remained untouched. Whether out of fear, resignation, or simply a lack of appetite, he faced his final moments on an empty stomach. As dawn approached, prison staff began the meticulous preparations for the execution. His head was shaved to ensure proper contact for the electrodes, and he was dressed in pale blue prison-issued clothing. Later, he was escorted to the execution chamber. It was kind of a dark-themed room with an oak electric chair known as Old Sparky. 42 witnesses, including journalists, law enforcement officials, and family members of Bundy's victims, watched from behind a plexiglass barrier. Slowly, he was strapped into the chair. Thick leather restraints secured his arms, legs, and torso. A metal skull cap, fitted with a saline-soaked sponge to conduct electricity, was placed on his shaven head. Another electrode was attached to his right leg. Superintendent Tom Barton asked Bundy if he had any last words. In a calm but slightly shaky voice, Bundy said, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." He directed his words to his attorney, Jim Coleman, and Fred Lawrence, who stood nearby. With that, the room fell silent. Barton nodded to the executioner, who was hidden behind a partition. Finally, the switch was flipped. A surge of 2,000 volts of electricity coursed through Bundy's body. Witnesses described seeing his body tense and his hands clench into fists. A faint puff of smoke rose from his right leg. The current was stopped after 1 minute, and medical personnel moved in to confirm his death. A paramedic checked for a pulse, and a doctor shone a light into his eyes. At 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was pronounced dead. The life of one of America's most notorious killers had come to an end. As news of Bundy's death spread, the crowd rose in celebration. Cheers rang out, and the chants of "Burn Bundy Burn" echoed louder. Some people banged frying pans, while others waved banners triumphantly. For many, this was a moment of closure, a symbolic end to the horrors Bundy had inflicted. In the days following his execution, Bundy's body was cremated. His ashes were scattered in Washington's Cascade Mountains, the same area where he had disposed of several of his victims.